and live from the Scheinfeld Center Innovator Studio at Santa Barbara City College. It's the Enlightened Entrepreneur Podcast. Thank you for joining us here. My name is Julie Sampson, and we're here to build livelihoods that matter, be your own boss, and make the world an even better place. So at this point, you've defined your passion project and your action plan. You've identified the resources you need and totaled the project cost. Now the question arises, how will you find funding for your passion project? Let's get into it. Joining us to break it down from Santa Barbara City College is Chief Financial Officer and Accountant, Dr. Laura Woyach. Laura holds a Doctorate of Business Administration in Business Management from Argosy University and an MBA and BBA in Accounting from Georgia Southern University. Before joining SBCC, Laura served as a tenured faculty at Ventura College for 8 years. Laura has over 20 years of accounting experience in the private, public, and nonprofit sectors. Laura, welcome to the podcast, and thank you so much for taking the time.
I'm really glad to be here. Thank you so much. This is wonderful. This is awesome. I love doing this. This is why we do what we do. So this is great.
That's right. Okay, so before we get started, for our audience, let's clarify the characteristics of a passion project. So a passion project is self-led. It aligns with your interests, your values, mission, your professional aspirations and academic aspirations, and your strengths. It solves a problem or addresses a compelling need that's bigger than yourself to create positive impact and achieve a targeted outcome. It demonstrates originality, and it has a specified beginning and end and requires a sequence of tasks to be completed in between. Also, passion projects can take many different forms. So they can be anything from community events or community-based projects, communication platforms such as podcasts, YouTube channels, social media profiles, and blogs. It can be research-based, so primary or secondary research. It can involve authorship, documentation, publishing books and articles. It can include creative endeavors such as murals, exhibitions, collections, portfolios, things that are constructed. And it can include new products and services, things that improve the lives of others. So a business startup could totally be a passion project. So before getting into the funding sources, the bottom line is that the founder of the project needs to know how much funding they need, which means knowing their costs. So it's easy to miscalculate the cost of a project or business venture, and that can jeopardize the outcome. So Laura, what are the top 3 mistakes that people make when costing out their project or business startup, and how can they be avoided?
So I would say one of the things that often happens is someone has this great idea and they want to get into something and they don't think about little things like, does this need permitting? Do I have to do something special that's OSHA or and that has dollar impact and things that you might not realize. Like somebody says, I want to open up a restaurant, and you don't realize that there's a lot of legality issues that you have to do to be able to serve food to people. And if you don't do those things, you can get shut down. And so doing thorough research and not just, I mean, it's great to jump in and head feet first and go for it, but make sure you do thorough research. Go ask questions of people who are doing what you do or want to do. Research your local government regulations because it's different everywhere. Even within California, county to county can be different about what's required. Sometimes it's just a business license, and sometimes there's a lot of permitting and regulation, or even where you want to put your store. One street might have a certain permitting. I'll give you a really quick example. Certain establishments in Santa Barbara, if you're not within a certain number of feet to a public parking lot or a parking space that's large enough, you can't open a business there. Even if the facility is perfect and it meets every need, the city will not allow you to have your establishment in that location. So don't go rent something and then find that out later. So do your research. And the next thing I would say is, and this happens, I can't tell you how many times, write your budget down. Don't just think in your head, this is what I think I'm going to spend. The number one thing that happens, I like to call it my $5 Starbucks mistake. And that is, I only go to Starbucks and I only spend $5. And you do that every single day, add that up. That's hundreds of dollars that in your brain just is $5, but it's not really $5. It's hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So writing your budget down. And then the last one that I would like to say is figure out what your business model is. How are you going to generate revenue? Are there multiple streams? And what are you going to charge? I can't tell you how often what you think you can charge for something is often nowhere near either too high or too low. I've seen it happen in both ways. So knowing what your business model is and making sure like, hey, I'm going to sell my widget or I'm going to provide my service. And you think this is the dollar amount I should sell it for. And then you go cost it out and you find out you're going to actually lose money. Okay, well then how are we going to prevent losing money? So that's one of those things that you have to really work the math.
Yeah, great. I think it is important to say with all of those great points, not every passion project is income generating, but if it is, definitely that viability and feasibility in the business model is important. And also in all cases, since the passion project is designed for broader impact, it's important to validate that the project's outcome is actually needed. Right?
Yes.
Good point. Okay, great. Let's get into the funding now. We can look at self-funding, family and friends funding, grants and loans, also crowdfunding. Let's start with the self-funding. What are the common pitfalls to self-funding and how can founders position themselves well to take on the extra costs wisely?
So in a lot of cases, if you have all the money, you personally have all the money, one of the things I will say, and I give this example to my students, sometimes it's actually better to borrow if you can get a good interest rate, right? So I'll give you my example of when I was in college. I had the money to pay for college. I chose to take out student loans because the federal government was giving me, I think it was 2.5% at the time. I'm old and this was a different world I live in. But I took my student loan money, invested it, made 6% on the investment. And yes, I had to pay it back. But if you do the difference between 2.5% and 6%, I was making more on my borrowed money because it was free money, basically. It was very low interest money. So sometimes it might make more sense. If you have enough money, do you have enough money to do your passion project and still maintain living? Still maintain all of your life's expect, So a lot of times I might see people say, yeah, I have most of the money. Okay, how much are you willing to put in? How much can you sacrifice? What is that going to mean to your day-to-day life? If it's no impact and you've got that rich uncle, hey, amen to that and go for it. But if you don't, look at maybe if you do have all the money, maybe it's actually better to borrow if the interest rates are low. Right now, they're not. That's not the idea, right? 7%, which just came out yesterday, is what mortgages are at, highest rate in 20 years. So that's probably not the case, but what if you're not doing a passion project right now? You do it in 10 years. Well, shoot, even in 6 months, it could be different. So just pay attention to what makes more sense. Is it better to borrow or is it better to invest? If you have enough money, and plan accordingly. I often find most people don't have all the money they need. And in that case, then you have to go, okay, how much am I willing to put in? Where am I going to get the rest from?
Exactly. And I think that something to add in terms of the cost calculation is to ensure that there's a buffer in there.
Oh, yeah.
1,000%. Things will come up that aren't expected, right?
Oh,
and so
yeah.
You want to have a buffer. I often hear about 6% as a rule of thumb.
Yep. And if you do it in monthly, one of my favorite financial investors always has this rule of you have immediate 3-month money. So 3 months worth of living expenses, whatever your deal is, sitting in immediate bank account. You have 6 months money that might be, say, invested in a CD that might take 30 days to get to. And then you have long-term money. So if you set those standards and you set those different pots of money for different periods of time, you will naturally create your buffer.
Yeah. And let's just step in here because finance can be a stressful thing for people, right?
Okay.
And so I think it's important to know about support, like different courses
Sure.
that are available. Like here at Santa Barbara City College, There's the personal finance course.
Yep, Finance 100.
Yeah, do you want to say a bit about how that could be helpful?
Sure. We actually have, I would say there's Finance 10 and there's Finance 100 and even Finance 101. I'd almost go as far as to say Finance 202. All of those finance classes provide, different types of education, different levels. Obviously, the bigger the number, the more advanced, but they deal with, like, I believe Finance 101 is very focused on banking and the world of banking. And if you're going to deal with banks to grow your business, grow your passion project, whatever you're doing, all of those, I would say in sequence, would be very, very important to take.
Great. Okay, so since we're talking about loans, maybe we could get into the second most common form of funding, which is family and friends. So what are the top 3 mistakes that people can make when borrowing from friends and family, and how can they be avoided?
So I would say one, oftentimes if you're having to ask family and friends, maybe it's a very easy conversation. Maybe it happens very sort of casually and it's not really a big deal, which is great. And that's wonderful. What I always say is in that casual conversation, I think it's really important to go back and write out maybe in an email or a letter, like, here's what I think you said, and here's what I feel you're agreeing to, because I can't tell you how many times an uncle or an aunt, my sister, when she was opening her business, had to go to family. And sometimes what they think they heard and what you think you said are not always the same exact thing. And so you want to sort of write down, here's what I think we agreed on in that conversation. Are you okay with this? If that ends up being okay, having an official contract, even if it's family or friends, how much are you borrowing? Is there interest involved? What are the due dates? When are you expected to pay this back? How are you going to pay this back? Now in the world of technology, maybe it's Venmo, maybe it's Zelle, maybe it's on the first of every month, you're sending a check old school. Different people want it different ways, but have that worked out. And the other thing that I think this is sort of the heart of when you deal with family and friends, show that there's an invested relationship, right? Don't just take their money and walk away. Like, keep in touch with them, tell them, show them, how are you using their money? When my sister she borrowed some money from an uncle of ours. And when he came to town, she took him and showed him, look, this is the space that you helped me have. And this is the number of kids. And this is the equipment I bought with your money. And he called all the time. It sounds so silly and so minimal. And it was a 30-minute visit to her dance studio, but it made him feel very proud and saw like, oh, it was worth it. And actually what ended up happening is he forgave her. He saw how successful she was and said, I don't want it back. That's yours. And so you can build that, but you have to show your family that they're more than just their money, or friends. So I think that's really important too, and then also maybe even have deliverables like, hey, I promise if or if you keep going back for more money, showing them why and showing what their growth is bringing to the business because you keep asking for this. So again, validating why you're borrowing the money and where it's going, I would say is sort of where I like to go, because family and friends, like, hopefully you're not just going to write them off after you take their money, right, and you keep that relationship.
Right. Excellent. So what are some good sources of grants? Grants are often overlooked. So do you know the top 3 best sources for grants? So
first of all, if you can get grants, best money in the world, it's free money, it's wonderful money. You have to remember you get what you pay for. So you're not paying anything. They're giving you free money. You're still going to have to provide information and follow up. But I always start, if you're here locally in Santa Barbara, first and foremost, you should know we have the largest number of nonprofit organizations per capita in the world. So we have a lot of money here. There's a lot of nonprofits looking to give money away. The best way to find that is this nonprofit resource network. It's nprnsb.org. They have an amazing website that gives a lot of information. They have a whole list of every single grant they have, exactly when it's due, what's needed. It's a whole Excel spreadsheet. It's really amazing that they've pulled it together. So that's local money. State money, California has, and California I will say is a step above a lot of other states. They actually have a great website that I go to all the time, even for personal stuff. Like if you're not doing a passion project and you can't pay a certain bill, there's grants out there to help you pay your bills. And I did this when I was in grad school. And I got a grant to help pay for all of my utilities throughout the entire time I was in grad school. It's called grants.ca.gov. And it's just a California nonprofit website that says, here's all the grants that the state of California has for, you'd be amazed. If you're of any kind of international descent, there's grants for you. If you're in school, there's grants for you. If you're elderly, there's grants for you. If you're young, there's things you're like, they'll give me money for that. Yeah, they will. And all you have to do sometimes is write a couple pages of like how you used it or why it helped you succeed. And that's what I had to do to get my money for my utilities. And then on the federal level, so the federal government also likes to give away a lot of money. And back in the day, there used to be this book, and it was literally, it was 1,001 grants that the government gave away. And it was this book you could go through, and it was by paragraph. Now it's a website. I had the book, and it helped me numerous times, undergrad, master's degree, PhD, just out of college, looking for a job, not employed, not having any money, can't rely on my family. So it's a really great resource. And it is usa.gov/grants. Awesome.
Those are great sources. So as the director of the Scheinfeld Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, I can say another source of grant funding are competition. Oh, yeah. So if you're starting a business, that's a form of grant money. You don't have to pay that back typically. You do need to, it is taxable income, but we have a lot of success stories of students who have started ventures from the grant money that they get from competitions. Also, you might look at some accelerators. Students who win the Scheinfeld New Venture Challenge are able to get into the Get Real Accelerator, and there's a $10,000 award that goes to the winner.
That's really awesome. Like that's serious money.
Yeah,
that's a game-changing amount of money.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's
right.
Definitely a resource.
Yeah. So let's talk about loans. When we're talking about a passion project that isn't a business startup, then it would be a personal loan. What are the main criteria that lenders look to from borrowers?
So the hardest part, especially, so if this is, say it's a passion project, right? You're not incorporated, you're not an LLC, you're just you by yourself. In America, we have this wonderful thing called the FICO score, which basically says, how good are you at paying back money, or how good are you at being lent money? How responsible are you? And your FICO score is the number one thing that they look at. It's the sort of the line in the sand. And if your score is good enough, generically FICO score ranges, not generically, it ranges from 300 to 850 to usually to be eligible for a personal loan at a reasonable interest rate, you really need to have a FICO score over 700. So you can, I would say if you're in the 600 range, usually find people who are willing to give you money. What I will tell you is those interest rates are maxed out on the legal limit. Now, granted, wonderfully, our government has come in and said you can't charge over a certain level of interest, but we're talking like 40 and 50% interest. I mean, these are really high interest rate loans. So typically, and especially if you're young, it's not that you have bad credit, it's just you have no credit. Well, no credit also gives you a very low FICO score. So typically personal loans is just, it's not very successful because most people don't have the rates. So I would say that's one of the biggest things. The other thing too, let's say you don't have a great rate, but you have collateral. You know, if you have a family member that's left you some property, or you have stocks or something, that sometimes can act as collateral to help you get the loan. But if you have a FICO score that's good enough to get you a personal loan, pretty much that's a done deal. A lot of times, if you happen to be incorporated or you are an LLC, they'll look at things like your debt to equity ratio. They'll look at your financial statements. If you are revenue generating, what does that revenue look like over the last years? What's your projections of revenue? But again, you typically, for them to go that far, to even be interested in that, you have to be incorporated or an LLC. They might look at you as if you've been a business as a sole prop and you don't have great credit, and you can show them your viability and you have collateral, that might help get you to the personal loan. But I would say usually personal loans are typically not successful for either bad credit or no credit individuals.
Okay, great. Awesome.
Cool.
Let's move on to crowdfunding. So crowdfunding can be used for all sorts of ventures at all different stages. But I think a key here is that most successful campaigns are those that have the largest and most engaged communities
For sure.
behind them before they even start the campaign. So those are usually customers or other supporters of the mission. And there are over 1,400 crowdfunding organizations in the US, and they each specialize in a specific type of funding certain types of concepts. So it's important to know the requirements, terms, and conditions. I think that one of the sources that you had mentioned, Laura, is Kiva. Do you want to talk a bit about Kiva?
Sure. Kiva, I really like Kiva. And the reason I like it is because sometimes a lot of loans or a lot of different types of funding sources want to give you a lot of money. Like you need to be borrowing thousands. Well, maybe you only need 1,500 or you need 500 and you don't need a whole lot. Kiva works. It's really great in the international world. It's one of the best ones. There's a wonderful program locally in the US, kivaus.org. You write your story. Why do you need your money? And you'd be amazed at, I didn't know this. Wealthy people like to give away money. And they just go on websites and they just start going, that sounds like a good project. And that sounds like a good project. And you get one and you get one. And especially if you get really close, they put you up on this website. It says you're only, $500 away from meeting your goal, or you're only $100 away, or 67. Funny enough, just for this podcast, I went on there and I was like, there was 3 of them. One guy was $23 away and he was in like Ghana trying to buy a cow, I think. And another was a woman who was trying to raise money for her cotton farm. And like, it was like $23, $150, and $67. And I was like, you know what? I'm in a giving mood today. And I just finished all 3 of those off and completed them. And so I like Kiva. Another thing Kiva does, if you shop on Amazon and you go through the Kiva Amazon website, every dollar you spend, Amazon gives 5 cents towards Kiva. So it's also a loan situation where you can apply for the Kiva loan, not just through crowdfunding. And so I think it's a website most people don't know about. And I found it actually through purchasing Amazon. And they're like, hey, do you want to be a part of this? And I said, oh yeah, I'm here shopping anyway. I'd like to give some money to a good cause. So
one of the most important things is that whatever site you're considering, really look at those regulations and their policies to make sure that it's a good alignment, right?
Right. And don't forget, and a lot of people don't, I can't tell you how many students I have that don't realize this. All money raised through crowdfunding is fully taxable. So just don't forget, like if you raise $1 million, you don't get to keep all of that. Put 40% away and pay your taxes on that money. So just remember, whatever you crowdfund, put 40% aside so that you can pay the taxes on it. 40% might be too high, but it's better to have too much set aside, not too low. So
excellent point. Okay, finally, we have funding from investors. So how do you know if your venture is a good candidate to take on investors? And what are some pros and cons of taking on investment?
Kind of goes back to my very first thing I said, research, right? Go find out about what other projects have they funded. Have they funded things that are similar to what you do? Have a conversation, like actually meet them, have a conversation with them. Do you mesh in your personalities? It's kind of like finding a partner in business. They are your partner in business for all intents and purposes. And you have to make sure that, like, what are they expecting out of you? Is it worth taking their money? What are you setting yourself up for? Can you communicate well? Things that we kind of take for granted is just like, but those are really important, because if they're giving you a bunch of money and investing in your project, what are they expecting back? What's the relationship? And just, again, research, find out, have those conversations, and they might be uncomfortable, but it's worth having them.
Yeah. I think a few things to keep in mind is that investors are wanting to make a return on their investment when
yeah.
So
they want money.
So, showing that your venture has a high growth rate, that they want to see founders with a vision and commitment and passion. They want evidence of traction and scalability, a great management team, a large market size and potential, reasonable valuation, viable exit strategy, all those questions that you hear on Shark Tank.
Yeah, I was gonna say
right?
Shark Tank. Like, go watch Shark Tank. Look at everything they ask. They always ask the same question. And if you can't answer those, then it's probably not going to be a great relationship.
So let me see if we have some questions from the audience. Okay, is the subscription business model still kind of the holy grail of revenue, of a revenue stream?
In a lot of cases, I will say yes. It is where, especially in the world of, say, software, media, anything, if you can charge, because here's the beauty of it, right? Think about it from a business perspective. Somebody inputs their credit card. How many of you have subscriptions that you're paying for that you've forgotten that you're paying for? And guess what? They're still getting there, and it's $6.99. Like, oh, it's just $7. Well, multiply that by 100,000 people. That's a lot of money that you're making and you're not using it. So yes, the subscription model is still very, very, very popular, and it's pretty lucrative. It's very lucrative.
Yeah, great. Thank you. We have another one. How do you maintain a good financial budget with poor spending and saving habits?
It's like the cook who doesn't cook for themselves at home. I can relate to this because as much as I am a great accountant and I can do other people's accounting, my own personal finances sometimes are a disaster. Excel spreadsheets. I know this sounds crazy, but like, you need to build your tools. One of the things I love, there's an app called Mint. It just was bought by Rocket Money or Money Rocket. And I really utilize it, and it tells me exactly every penny I'm spending. I go in and I track it, and I actually reflect. And I think that's the big thing. And all of the things I always teach in business, the thing that gets left behind a lot of times is actually looking back and looking at how do you spend, analyzing your own finances. Where do you spend your money? Should you be spending that much on going out to eat? Should you be spending that much on whatever you do, clothes or extracurricular activities, or maybe it's all going into your project, but if you're sacrificing somewhere else. So having those tools, using an app, using Excel, helping yourself. And when you're losing and helping yourself, being able to ask for help from other people, whether it's if you have a good friend or a mentor or a professor or somebody who can help you. Time management. My students are like, how do I do time management? I can't. I'm like, you have a phone. Do you know how many tools are in that phone that will help you? So your phone is probably your best friend and stuff like this, because there are apps built for everything. And having a mentor, having somebody to go to and say, I'm not doing this well. I need help.
Yeah, really great advice. Okay, last question is, what is the best way to meet investors?
Well, so like here in Santa Barbara, we have SCORE, we have investors. Actually, isn't there a venture capitalist group that actually meets? So finding those, researching on the web, and going to those meetings. And you have to have, and this is hard for a lot of people. I will tell you, it's one thing, my rest his soul, my father said, you only get one chance to make a good first impression. Having a good handshake, walking into those meetings, introducing yourself, telling them, here's what I want, like showing up. So research, find out the meetings exist in every city across the country. There are people with lots of money who are trying to give it away and invest in businesses. You have to go put yourself in front of them and sell yourself and tell them why you are the best thing in the world and why they should invest in your project, business, program, whatever it is. And know your numbers, because that's the first thing. Watch Shark Tank, right? First thing, you might love what you do, but if you can't explain why it costs what it costs or where the money's going, they're not going to want to give you their money.
And there's support available, like at Santa Barbara City
Yeah.
College, through our Scheinfeld Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. Yes. We have a whole academic program that can enable you to work on your business in the classroom. So it's an incubators type of program. Yeah. And so if you're not in Santa Barbara, there might be a college around you that offers such an opportunity, but also our classes are online now. And also the finance classes.
Yep.
that
finance and accounting are both, we have a lot of online. So you could come and take online classes. You can participate through the Scheinfeld Center online, like what you're doing right now, online watching Zoom. The resources are there, and you just have to take the time to find them and then present yourself.
Excellent, Laura. Well, that's so great. Thank you so much for joining us. And now, everybody, you know how you can learn from Laura, right? Sign up for her courses through Santa Barbara City College. Thank you so much for joining us. This is a helpful conversation, I'm sure, for our audience. We would like to say that this information is informative. It's not meant to be the be all and end all. You need to do your own research, all right? But we hope that this has given you some guidance about where to start and get your support network around you so that you can make wise steps with people who have already been around the block and can help you see around corners. Great, thanks, Laura. We appreciate your availability and sharing your expertise. And join us again next Friday, where we're bringing you more content to bring your passion projects and your business ventures to life wisely. Thanks, everybody. Thanks again, Laura.
It's great to be here. Thank you.